Well, following the strikes early Saturday morning, there's been a debate about whether President Trump went far enough in sending a message. Michael Waltz is a former Green Beret commander and Florida GOP congressional candidate. He stayed with us late into the night, Friday and into Saturday. Good to have you back with us tonight.
Thanks, Shannon.
Okay, I want to play a little bit of what we're hearing from Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican out of South Carolina, about what he thinks about how this went down. Here's what he said.
If you're Assad, you heard a president saying, I'm going to make you pay a big price, you're an animal. And what did Assad see? A military strike that didn't change his life at all. So Assad wakes up the next day and goes back to work.
And Michael, beyond that, he's worried about the message it did or didn't send to Russia and Iran as well. What do you think?
Well, I think the strike was proportionate. There was a real concern from Secretary Mattis that that we risked escalation with the Russians. But I do also share Senator Graham's concern in that I would have liked to have seen more in terms of taking out the Syrian Air Force and their ability to deliver these chemical weapons in the future. And it would also neuter the Assad regime and its big advantage against some of our allies in the region, the Kurds and the Arabs. Mm-hmm. So I think right now we're in a waiting game. And if they do it again, I'd like to see a much more aggressive response, which is reportedly what President Trump wanted.
Yeah, and apparently his military advisors and the generals said to him, they wanted him to scale it back. They're worried about escalating things, obviously, with Russia and other places in the world. And they said this was not about taking out air defenses or air opportunities at all. It was just about shutting down the chemical weapons issue. Now, this weekend, reportedly, the Syrian regime has been carrying out airstrikes again, hitting in civilian areas. And it raises this question where people say, why is the U.S. going to get involved when there are chemical weapons involved, when people are being killed by other means as well, whether it's airstrikes from their own government? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, and I saw Ambassador Haley get asked that question, but I do think you are crossing a line when you're starting to use weapons of mass destruction. And have no doubt, the other country watching here is North Korea and Kim Jong-un, who have a massive, massive chemical and biological weapons stockpile. You are crossing a line there in terms of how you're inflicting casualties, the gruesome death that these people undergo, and the fact that they're often hiding in low areas, in basements, and in low ground from the conventional weapons attacks. These chemicals seep down into the low areas and into the basements. They're deliberately designed to inflict mass casualties on civilians, and we have to have a deterrence there to stop it.
Any thoughts on these incoming missiles tonight? The Syrian state television there reporting that there is incoming. The Pentagon says it's not us. Any thoughts?
Well, I think it's likely the Israelis. They never acknowledge their attacks. And one of the key things that I think is being overlooked here is the massive Iranian buildup on the Israeli border, on the Golan Heights. Hezbollah has never been in a stronger position than it is now. And I think we have a real tinderbox there with the Israelis and the Iranians. The Iranians are in an incredibly strong position, and the Israelis aren't going to stand for it.
Yeah, the New York Times reporting that they've got a senior official Israeli that is admitting some of this is the Israelis of the last week or so. And they say we just simply can't have this threat this close to our own homeland. Iran now saying it is going to retaliate for the strikes that have gone down. Israel says, why is Iran establishing its own air bases in Syria? That is the question. Much more discussion to come. Michael Waltz, thank you.
And sure, Shannon, that's one of the reasons. No, that's one of the reasons that we have to stay engaged. We all want the soldiers to come home, but we cannot let the Russians, Iranians, and then ISIS reconstitute in the region.
Yeah, it's not good for our interests or those of our allies either.
Absolutely.
Very difficult decisions to make. Michael Waltz, thank you for coming back. Good to see you again.